recording. Yay. So, hi, my name is Danielle Blunt. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a professional dominatrix from New York City.
My name is Gabriela Herstik. I also use she, her pronouns. I am a writer, an author, and a witch living in Los Angeles.
Awesome. And today we wanted to talk a little bit about glamour, magic, and how it intersects with BDSM and kink. And I would love, first of all, I love following you. It's just like so much beauty and intention behind the images that you put out there. And like that in itself feels like a form of magic. And there's this like beautiful honoring of the goddess and the feminine. And I would love if you could talk a little bit about your relationship with glamour and maybe segueing into how it may or may not intersect with kink.
Yeah, well, thank you for those beautiful compliments. I love your feed too. It always makes me feel like a fabulous pervert, which I love.
Yes.
So for me, glamour is using acts of beauty and fashion as a way to transform from the outside in. So for me, magic is really using energy and working with cycles to transform from the inside out. And I think that when we work with glamour, at least when I work with glamour, I'm using color and scent and clothing and intention behind how I present myself to change my frequency and align myself with whatever my intention is, even if that's just to cultivate a sense of beauty or confidence. Or a lot of my relationship with glamour is in honor of the goddess, which to me is the creative aspect of the divine that is not the logical part of our brain. It's not the structured, but it's really the fluid, intuitive, sexual, and also creative energy of the universe, of that kind of divine energy. So for me, I have been interested in fashion as long as I've been a witch, which is about 14 years now. And I went to school for fashion writing. I thought I was going to be a fashion editor, and I ended up writing books about witchcraft and kind of segued into that. But through that all, glamour has still been a very important part of my path. It is a way that I reclaim the way that I'm seen. It's a way that I choose to honor myself as a reflection of the divine. So I think that a lot of people kind of think that beauty and fashion and makeup are frivolous, but to me, it is an act of casting myself in a specific light. So glamour in itself actually has its origins in folklore and magic. It is that which veils what lies beneath it. So a glamour would be like the idea of changelings, of a fairy coming to a little newborn baby and switching out this human baby and stealing the human baby and replacing it with a fairy baby, and then casting a glamour on it so the parents don't realize that this isn't their child because it looks like them. Like, that is a form of glamour. And for me, my practice with magic and my life in general is really rooted in self-expression and beauty and sexual independence. And a lot of my work with glamour is a way to embody the goddess and to invite her into my being and to recognize myself as a reflection of her. And as I have been exploring submission the past 3 or so years, that's kind of even intersected with glamour more. So like, this collar is a collar that I have that I dedicated and ritualistically cleansed and consecrated and devoted to the goddess. So like, every morning I put it on and I look in the mirror and I say, I am devoted to the dark goddess of love and myself. And it really, for me, it really is like, because I think submission is such an embodied practice, or at least hopefully it is, because like, if you're not in your body, what's the point? It really is a way for me to like honor that aspect of myself as divine, and wearing things that make me feel like a sexy submissive, whether that's a collar or lingerie. It helps me get into the mindset. And I have all of my toys hanging on my wall, and like, even that kind of reminding me of like the beauty of submission helps me to appreciate and honor the aspect of myself even more.
I love that.
Thank you.
And I feel like visuals are such a big part of kink. specifically, or not specifically, but like I'm thinking right now about the role that visuals and glamour play in femdom and goddess worship and like feminization sessions. And it's both this like very tactile sensory experience that can be incredibly overwhelming, especially from like different height differentials, or if someone is on their knees submitting. I think that the intimacy and the way that like eyesight can hone in on one particular object of the outfit and create this obsession. Yes. And as an like obsession as an act of devotion and worship, and like ritualistically in a way that like brings you into that altered state. And like, so right now I'm thinking of, I had this one session with a client who was really into some feminization and like sissification and cuckolding. And he got me this really beautiful golden necklace, and he was like laying in like, it's like this huge chunky golden necklace. And like, I love gold. That's part of my magical practice. And his like mantra work over and over again was talking about like how he got me that necklace and how he was gonna think about me wearing it on a date with someone else. And like that became this, like the whole focus of the entire session was this, this like talisman, this like worship of this object in this way that totally transformed the entire space, so that like nothing really existed besides that necklace, and like that as like the link between us.
I love that. And the original definition of fetish is like a magical object or talisman.
Yeah.
So it's perfect.
Yeah, and I think the more that I've been getting deeper into kink, the more I've been thinking of fetish that way, because I never really considered myself a fetishist, because a lot of the fetish porn that I was watching, it didn't seem to have that like magical energy imbued within the object, and it just felt like it was just worship of an object, that the object was never transformed through worship. And I think there are a few fetishists that I've played with, and watching like their sexual energy begin to transform like a boot or like a body part or anything into something that it's not, which I think is both an act of fetish and an act of glamour to some extent.
Absolutely.
That was what really, that like energetic shift is what made me more interested in exploring fetishes of my own. So like when I put on a pair of boots, it like changes how I feel about myself, how I carry myself, how I'm perceived by other people. And having people then worship that object that I put that care into, and that like I also ritualistically clean, or have other people ritualistically like boot black for me, it creates this connection that without that object it might not be there, because we're both focusing and putting our energy into the same object for that goal of transformation.
Oh, I love that so much. And I feel like when I think of that, I think of it as like a feedback loop, like as a figure 8, and like in the center, that connecting point is that object of the fetish. That's so beautiful.
Yeah, and I think it takes like the same, I feel like just like in any good sex, it takes like the same energy, finding alignment and attunement and like transforming. So like whether or not an object is involved in that encounter, I think it really is about having the same intention, or a similar, or like an aligned intention, and being able to like do that work together if you're with another person, or being able to like feel embodied and do that work on your own. And you said something about scent being a part of your glamour work, which I found really interesting, because I think of my dominant persona as like a form of like playing with femininity and feminization in a way that I don't necessarily in my personal life. So it's not just my professional life, but just like part of my kink is like stepping into this like hard femme persona, and I'm more casual hard femme in my personal life, but like the ritual of getting dressed and I have like a different scent that I wear before I go into a professional BDSM session or a personal play, and like a ritual of taking it off and caring for the leathers as I transition out of that headspace, that sort of like helps hold the space for the container for the play and gets me into that dominant mindset that allows me to sort of work with the energy that's being offered.
I love that. And I feel like that's such a powerful form of glamour. And it's like, even like glamour is like the aftercare. It's like, that's like your way of like taking care of yourself. And like, I love that. I love using glamour as an act of like, or as a piece of like a liminal space in which you transform into something else. And I love that you have all these objects that help you find that power. And I really think the people that like shit on glamour are the people that have never experienced that, because it's like, you know, when if you feel it, like when you step into a good outfit, it is a different headspace, and it does transform the way that you are viewing the world because you feel different moving through it.
Yeah, and if you like find what makes you feel embodied, and I think that's originally where we started to have this conversation, because when you were posting some things about glamour and goddess worship, and it reminded me a lot about my work in feminization sessions, or like feminine induction sessions or specification sessions. And I think a lot of what I've found in my work with feminization, which I do with all different types of people across the gender spectrum, and for some people they find feminization very humiliating and find it like a form of humiliation play, which I don't play up too much in my work because I don't find being feminine to be humiliating, but I will like call that out for them. Like, what do you find about being feminine that's humiliating? Like, do you think I should be humiliated by what I'm wearing? And just like, so I'll definitely play with that. But one thing that's like really stood out to me, especially as I have more and more people who come to me for feminine induction sessions coming out as a trans woman or as non-binary or genderqueer, is that the time that they spend with me is one of the only times that they feel embodied, because it's the act of glamour and the act of putting on this like feminine armor that allows them to relax into submission. And I think like those are always the sessions that I really enjoy, is when it's and I think for some people it's both. It can be both humiliating to get to that point of submission, like some people need the humiliation to get there, and then for other people they just feel so comfortable and relaxed that they can like finally let go and surrender.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And I remember when we were first talking about this, how you were mentioning like you don't really do feminization as an act of humiliation, like that's not the purpose. And I love that. I think that is such like, that's so wise, and I just really appreciate that angle. And yeah, to be able to give space to people to like be their true selves and like really go deep in that is just, it's such an act. It like, it feels like such an embodiment of the goddess to be able to give people that space and to allow them to like experience these things and like honor that shame that might come up because they have been told their whole life that doing this thing is shameful, even if it's not necessarily innately shameful for them.
Yeah, and that's definitely something that I say is like, I'll play with your shame. And like, I don't think there's anything wrong about like feminization and humiliation sessions. It's just not something I'm particularly interested in. And like, I think people like can have an incredibly cathartic experience through that. And while I might not be actively humiliating someone, like shame, I think is a very potent tool to play with in BDSM scenes, and I think in magic.
Absolutely.
And like figuring out and like shame to me makes me ask questions about what led me to feel that way, or what led me to have this certain relationship with this object.
Yeah, I totally feel that. And that's something that even like over the last week, I've been really diving more deeply into, and like offering shame as, or working with shame as an offering to the goddess, like especially to like the dark goddesses. I feel like it's a really powerful offering, and it's still something like I don't quite understand about myself yet, but it's one of those things I feel like is an ongoing process. And like, yeah, I don't know, working with it is such a potent tool of transformation, and also just like release and catharsis, like you said.
Yeah, that makes me think of Have you read the Radiant Sutras?
I haven't. They've been on my list.
I highly recommend it. And that was like some of my studies of Tantra. And what I loved about the translation that I had of the Radiant Sutras, it was that like each act, whether it's good or bad, is a way to like meet the divine. And so it's like honoring darkness, honoring shame, and all of those are equally as important as honoring joy and happiness.
Absolutely.
And like embodiment, and that it's through intense focus or devotion or like fetish or glamour that you're able to reach that altered state.
Absolutely.
Divine.
I love that. I will have to look that up because
Yeah.
that sounds definitely on my alley. I definitely feel like even Tantra, like obviously it's different than BDSM, but that kind of like awareness of the way energy flows and the power of the subversive and the power of the things that you're not supposed to do as like a sacrament to the divine is something that like I think for me really draws me to BDSM. Like the space that I have to do the things that I'm not supposed to do and turn those into like an offering to Goddess is something that really inspires me and draws me to this path. So.
I love it. And I think that comes back to like feminization or sissification sessions as well, is like, especially for masculine presenting folks, men, this is something that you're told that is shameful. And we said this in the beginning of the conversation, was that like so many people don't like respect or understand glamour or fashion or makeup and see it as something that's frivolous. So I think like the act of reframing it and like having, like for me, having these incredibly ritualistic feminization sessions, which is just, I very much think of it as like feminization induction. Like you're at your, like you're maybe like the boy at a sleepover and all of the like sisters come in and like induct you into feminization, and you're just like sitting there and just like, oh, I feel like so special and honored to be able to be a part of this thing that I'm told that I'm not supposed to enjoy. And like you're being like sort of taken over by this thing that you were told that you're not supposed to explore. And I think that's a really beautiful thing.
I love that. And I feel like there's also a level of empathy because like once you're in that space, then like you're able to understand it and kind of like extend that to the women in your life or the femmes in your life. So I love the interplay between that. And I love that you're able to offer people like the space to explore that without judgment. I think that's really important too.
Yeah, and I think there's so few spaces for people to feel that. I feel like there's more now than there were a few years ago, which is really amazing. And I think social media plays a really interesting role in people's ability to express themselves and try on different parts of their persona or themselves and transform themselves, and just like a continual act of transformation.
I love that. And I feel like that's what BDSM is. It's just constantly unfolding different aspects of yourself and like ritualizing it and honoring whatever feelings come up, even if there's something we're told we're not supposed to have. And I think that's so powerful.
Definitely. And I think that's sort of where this conversation stemmed from, was one of your posts about glamour just like really stood out to me, and I was like, oh, I would be really interested in creating like a feminization ritual with you. So I hope that that's something that we can do.
I would love that. I would love that.
Another time.
Yes, that sounds great, and it's just an honor. I admire you so much, and I remember when you made a post that said Femdom is your religion, and I'm like, that is just so beautiful and so powerful, and I feel like it's same but different to my own relationship with the divine. So it feels very special to be able to talk about this.
And I definitely felt that like similarities and differences in the relationship to like glamour and feminization in witchcraft in both of our practices.
Yes, I love it.
Wonderful. Well, I'm excited to create that ritual.
Me too.
In the future.
Me too. I feel like like Libra season and Scorpio season will be the perfect time to kind of dive into that glamorous darkness.
Beautiful. Okay, I'm gonna stop the recording real quick.
Beautiful.